everybody. Today we're going to talk about some distortional elements and some Chris Cornell-esque type things with those distortional elements. If that interests you, join me. Alright, so you heard me do a little bit of a demonstration there of Outshined, which has got to be one of the most ridiculous songs to sing on the planet. I had to do that on tour. My one band, Vegas Nerve, they're like, yeah, you can do that, right? Like, dude, that's one of the hardest songs to sing on the planet. It's not that hard, right? Even all you were going to do it half step. So anyway, I mean, it's one thing to try to do it clean and hit all those notes. It's another thing to try to really keep a nice distortion or to try to do it in a Cornell type of way like he did. It's just all bananas. So I'm going to start out by, this is always off the cuff, and I'm trying to teach, different ideas here. And I want to let people know when you're doing something like this or when you're trying to learn something like these things, it's coming. This is a very kind of advanced thing. And that doesn't mean that you can't watch videos like this and experiment. I mean, that's what this whole thing is about. It's about experimentation and trying to push your voice further and figure out these different things. But, I've had people write to me and say comments that are super ignorant. Like, you said that I would get this faster and all this. And it's like, dude, everybody's going to have their own pace. Everybody's going to have their own speed. And when it comes to developing something like this in a healthy way or a sustainable way or all those kinds of things, it's going to take some time. And what kind of time does that mean? One day you might find something like this that works a little bit, and it probably would be because your voice is just a little tired, so your voice is just kind of letting you push into it, and then you're like, dude, I got it. It doesn't work that way. Then you'll come back the next day and be like, I can't do it. And most of us have been there. Most of us are going to be there. There's certain amounts of swelling that happen that sometimes are good and sometimes are bad. And sometimes it's confusing to be like, I've said this before, like, if I warm up for like 3 hours, then I can do this. And it's like, in what universe would that be like what you're supposed to be doing? So keep those things in mind as you do this. Most of the stuff and the ideas that I'm going to be explaining and trying to relay into your brains are just tactics to try, sounds to try to make, and it's also about hearing somebody and that kind of back and forth where you hear somebody make these sounds and then maybe you try to do it and you're like, I can't do that, but you hear somebody else doing it in front of you in a healthy way. Sometimes that is enough to blow your brains open, and not to mention that happens in life a lot of times. You might live your life a very specific way and then meet somebody that lives a totally different way, and then your mind's like, oh my God, and it changes the course of your entire life. So here's hoping I'm going to do that today with this video. So we're talking about the great Chris Cornell. I know in some ways a lot of people know me or find me because I sound a little bit like Chris, and sometimes I'm trying to do that more than others, but in this case I'm trying to do it a little bit more. But I want you to also know that I lost my voice for about 5 years, my singing voice, and then it started to affect my regular speaking voice. I lost that when I quit music and when I stopped singing, so it wasn't a matter of overdoing it or anything like that, but I'm still getting my voice back. What you just heard me do, I couldn't have done that probably about 2 weeks ago, or maybe to some degree I could, but I'm now finding new pieces of these puzzles that I had lost. One of the good things about having something like that go away is, well, first of all, you respect and appreciate it more. But secondly, as I'm coming back to it now this second time, I'm finding more pieces to put together that make more sense on a physical level because I have to be more, very aware of what the hell's happening, and then I can relay that information onto you. Isn't that nice? So let's get into this. So as we're talking about vocal distortion, as we're talking about, all those kinds of things, or a Chris Cornell type of vibe like this, there might be mixed voice that's happening. There might be vowel modification that's happening. There might be compression that's happening. There could be a lot of different things that you might have to research and get into. Diaphragmatic support. I have all videos on these things, but keep that in mind, especially if you're just coming to this as a very amateur singer and you're like, I want to fucking sing like that. It's like, well, I'm going to cover some of those things and try to talk about some of the things, but there's only so much I can do in one little lesson, and there's only so much that you can retain in one lesson. So one of the coolest things that I've recognized with this recently that has been a breakthrough or a help for me is, and I've talked about this before, but in terms of finding distortional components to your voice, or these distortional spaces, there are about 3 different kind of distortional spaces that we can find, that I found. And I've talked about these. There's vocal fry, which is your vocal cords themselves, just going like that, and then we push a little bit of extra air through, and I'm not very good at this because I don't practice it very much because I lost my voice. So if I take like this, that's just vocal fry. Now, that's not really going to develop too great of a distortion for you in terms of a controlled note type of distortion, because we're getting rid of the note for a big, we're kind of getting rid of the note, if you can hear that. It's turning into complete chaos. It does create a very nice scream. It's not that hard to do, but, in terms of this, it's not exactly what we're doing. Either way, that's one. If we go above that, we have something called the false chords. Those are the false chords. We can control those and do notes with them. And they can be used for distortion. They are going to kick in for different places in distortion. But the best distortion that you can find, which might be very confusing, exists more with the soft palate and the nasality pharyngeal space. Ow! Oh! So when I'm doing those noises, I'm finding a higher distortion. Sometimes these things are going to get confusing. If you start to develop more of your pharyngeal space, and if you start to develop more of your nasality space, you will hopefully find these spaces. Now, to find them, E is a very good vowel. Placing and pushing your voice towards the nose. Is down here. Up here, the same thing. If I kind of go with a UNG type of sound and position my soft palate, I want to keep thinking about my soft palate where uvula hangs down, the funny thing on the back of the throat. Every time we're doing distortion like this and we're kind of trying to learn how to utilize this correctly, we're imagining our soft palate like a triangle, like a pointy dome, like a teepee, something like that. And we're trying to lift that up and push everything into a pocket. Oh! So I'm pushing everything into this kind of space. Does that make sense? As I continue to go up, all the time, I'm trying to continue to push that stuff up into a space. Now, what does that do for me, or what does that mindset or that visualization do for us? It keeps us in check in terms of reminding us that everything gets smaller as we go higher, and everything continues to compress and kind of get smaller in this way when we go higher. So we're creating a space for ourselves to start compiling all that tension and that energy into this top space. Now, you can take that information and run with it and do a lot of bad things. But just keep that in mind. Also, as we're practicing these things, know that you're always going to be in a position where you can go forward or backwards, forward and backwards, forward and backwards. You have to pay attention to yourself and be very subtle and very, you have to pay attention to the subtleties is what I'm trying to say, and pay attention to if you're falling out of the face or if you're moving backwards. Falling out of the face, moving backwards. I will show you the difference. This is right close to my bridge or right over my bridge. If I'm in this position, or especially if we're focusing on distortion, I will do it correctly first. I'm going to move my voice backwards towards the nasality or towards the back of my head as much as I can. I'm moving backwards. The other way. There, I'm not keeping my jaw in check. I have to raise and change my physicality, and my voice is falling forward. Therefore, I can't go any higher. So there's a lifting mechanism. And anyway, so let's get into this distortional kind of idea. One of the things that came through recently, and I was kind of noticing, but I couldn't tie some of these pieces together, was finding that upper distortion, if you can find it. Continue practicing with, like I said, UNG. And it's very nasal. Even if you're up here in more of a head voice, it's not, it's, when you can find some distortion like that, we're going to start trying to add that on notes without like this heavy compression, without this heavy, arresting the body. There's plenty of songs we can think about for that. If we think about this, we can kind of take it in a direction of like taking, I got a feeling so down, but we'll take it down a little bit. There it is. Got a feeling so. So this is right between my physical baritone bridge. So, oh! So we're going to move down farther than that. And we're going to try to start adding this almost to the speaking voice. So what we're getting at here is that we're trying to calm all of that energy down. When we start to get into this hyper kind of compressed space, it starts to wear us out a lot of times. And what I want to try to do is find that distortion above these notes, but in a speaking voice. I got a feeling so down, got a feeling so down. I can do that all day. And you can tell I'm not putting a lot of energy into it. Another way I figured this out was listening to Judas Priest. And you'll find if you watch him do stuff live, you'll find that a lot of times when he's distorting, he's almost kind of speaking. All night, I'm gonna live it up, live it up. And the more higher I go, the more I have to lift and compress and start to mix and do those things. Live it up, live it up, live it up. But normally, if I can get into a range where I can just sit in that, you got another thing coming. But like I said, we're not in Metallica land. We're not, we're not down there. And you can tell a huge difference, especially since my voice is a little bit more warmed up. But anyway, if we want to find that with the false chords, we could go straight to Metallica. Hey, 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 here I go now. You can tell that what he was doing later in his career, and I think he reverted a little bit to the better distortion now, but it was down here. We're talking about Judas Priest, we're talking about Cornell, we're trying to find an upper one, but like I said, the same way. We're trying to find it on speaking notes. You can tell that I'm making an ENG or a UNG, and I'm broadening it out. Sometimes we have to make the snake face. But we're definitely using or ENG or and we're focusing all of our energy and attention to push up into that soft palate. So like I said, we're taking that first. I got a feeling so down. If you have trouble doing that, you got to keep focusing on making the sound and focusing on your pharyngeal area. It's important for me to mention again that pharyngeal type of nasality type of sounds, regardless of your physical skull makeup. Yes, I have a larger nose. I might be able to have a bigger nasal space, similar to Cornell. But if you don't, that doesn't always just mean you can't use nasality. No, it means that we have to spend time in that place and start to recognize it as a part of the voice. Does that make sense? If you spend time there at first, it's going to sound strange, and it's going to sound kind of like this. I gotta feel so. But what happens is over time, it starts to gel with the rest of your voice, which leads me to the next point I have here. We're going to be talking about warming up, the way you warm up, and the way that these muscle groups work, and the way that we're trying to get these muscle groups to work. So we're going to talk about something called preloading a muscle group. I have been working out for a long time in my life, and I've always had trouble building my chest. At some point, I read something about preloading your pectoral muscles. What the fuck does that mean? What it means, or what it means in this context, or whatever you want to get at, is that before we just jump in and go and start beating up a muscle group and trying to work it out, we're going to warm up that muscle group, but we're also going to really get blood flow and get that muscle group to kind of wake the fuck up and understand what's happening. If I went into the gym and I was going to train my pecs, just chest, meaning I'm going to do bench press and stuff like that, but I go into the gym and I do 2 sets of really heavy stuff for my biceps first. Do you know what that's going to do? Can you guess what that's going to do? What that's going to do, then when I go to do my bench and everything like that, is that muscle group is already engaged and it's ready to go. On an animalistic primal type of level, you have told that muscle group, some shit is about to go down. So that muscle group is going to start engaging and trying to take over when I'm trying to actually focus on other muscle groups and get those to work. Why does that happen? Like I said, it's a very animalistic, simple thing to understand. You've already told that muscle group, yes. So it can be very difficult to back off and let go of things that are already like this and ready to go and be like, no, dude, calm down. Your voice is exactly the same way, except these are smaller muscle groups. They're harder to kind of understand. Most people are focused on finding their voice and, accenting their voice and, everything from right here. There are other muscle groups that we are engaging and learning how to engage here. Once again, the pharyngeal space, the soft palate, everything kind of is kicking into gear. So when we are warming up, when I warm up, I am mostly right out of the gate focusing on higher notes. Yes, you can focus on head voice first. But as I go higher, I'm focusing on those muscles. Why am I doing that? I am preloading my voice and preloading those muscle groups so that when I go high, those are the muscle groups that are kicking in. Now, it depends on you as a singer, depends on how high your chest voice can go, blah, 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 blah. But if you can spend some time warming up those muscle groups and remembering, those are kind of my high voice muscles, and training those to take over when we get higher, then we're training our voice to go like this and kind of, to use weird words, collapse in on itself in a good way. Instead of and blowing ourselves out this way. If I just warm up like Metallica-wise down here, think about the voice like a tube again. We have our vocal cords here, we have our false cords here, we have our soft palate here. If I just focus down here and I put a lot of energy down there, or I sing just a couple songs to warm up, and they're kind of chesty and heavy down here, that muscle group down there is going to be the main thing that starts going, okay, I got it. Then when you want to go sing high, that muscle group is going to be the main thing grabbing a hold, being like, we got this, and you're going to start wearing yourself out. It's also important for me, as I'm mentioning all these ideas, to mention that wherever your main point of compression kind of kicks in, especially in a distortional way, that you're still going to be moving below and above that place. You can kind of hear that, right? I'm moving below and above that compression point. When that compression point really kind of keeps kicking in, and the heavier I kind of push into it, it's always trying to bring my voice back down to that level, because that's the main point that's making, contact and really wanting to be the main governing force of the voice. So if that point's down here, I'm going to get tired very fast. And I know this firsthand from singing Outshine when I was on tour, because I would get stuck in that part of my voice right out of the gate with the first song and be like, oh shit. And I knew almost the rest of the set I was going to have to do that, because I just jumped in the water too soon with the wrong muscle group because I was filled with testosterone and adrenaline. That's for another lesson, talking about singing live versus singing in the studio. There is a big difference, and there can be a very big difference. So anyway, I'll try to give some exercises here so that you can follow along with this stuff. First and foremost, we're always trying to find these things clean. Everything should be able to be done clean. If you cannot do it clean, and you can only do it distorted, you are doing something wrong. You are doing something wrong. So keep that in mind. Meaning that you should, especially if you're singing a song like this and you're doing it live, you should be able to be like, okay, I'm kind of tired, and back the hell off. Listen to, Linkin Park and a lot of these people that are heavy all the time with distortion, and then they kind of wear out. At least you can still sing the song clean, instead of just being like, hey, guess what, guys? No more. No mas. So we're going to focus in on this pharyngeal space again. Just some quick scales, just some quick thoughts, because I've added a lot of different stuff to this. But let's take, once again, I'm a baritone, very typical male voice. So my bridge is right about at G4. So we're going to be pushing you close to that and then over that. And we're going to be focusing in as much as we can on that nasal space. Now, remember, you can fall forward or you can go back. You can fall forward, you can go back. We're going to be trying to pay attention to what's happening here. See what happens with your voice. It's going to feel very contrary and weird for you to move backwards and kind of loosen up. And in terms of pushing in the clutch, instead of getting louder and getting more, big with the sound and falling out of the face, we're going to be backing off the pressure. And that's very weird for most people to do. But that's what needs to happen, especially at first. Let's start here. So we're going to be making a UNG sound. That's terrible. Sorry. Now putting all that attention and energy into up here. You hear I'm kind of jumping and utilizing different musculature. Now I'm going to move it forward a little bit so you can hear this a little bit brighter. I'm going to use it like an ah sound. Back down. Now the wrong way, really quick. I'm instantly reaching, I'm instantly pulling, and you can tell that compression point is pulling me right back down. The resonance wants to move like a thermometer. We have to let it move. Like this. So, what the hell was I going to say? I wanted to also mention right there during that, if you're somebody that's like, should I be supporting? Should I be pushing in? Do I need support to do this? I'm not supporting it at all right there. I'm making sounds. That's all I'm doing. So I'm not using support to keep myself connected, and you should be supporting and being loud. You should be able to be loud or quiet with this. Are your vocal cords apart? Are they together? They should be absolutely together. It's not. That's very confusing, and it feels like, yeah, that's what he's talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. Now, let's try to find some of this distortion again and go through that. Remember, if you want to learn more about this stuff, or you want to kind of deep dive further into these things, I'm on Patreon teaching this stuff, and all the subscribers and all that kind of stuff, followers and notification bells, stuff helps me very much. I appreciate it. You think I'm doing this for my health? I'm just kidding. So, oh yeah, we're going to add some distortion to these. And like I said, we're going to go through what you're probably going to perceive as two different sets of things happening. And for a while, when you're practicing these things, meaning maybe months, you might experience it as two different kind of distinct places, but keep paying attention to this information, keep practicing these things. Eventually it will gel, and we're not just using, we're not using two like very weird contrary sounds. So remember, we're trying to find this in like a speaking voice type of thing. As you get closer to your bridge, it's going to be harder to do that, and we're going to have to change. So right there, I'm falling. So there I had to start lifting upwards. I'll shut up. One more. Now we can try to do sustain exercises with this too. We can try to do one note at a time. If you're able to find that, remember when you're hearing me transition there and move into actually more of a compressed space, I'm going up beyond my bridge. Then I have to push backwards and I have to lift up. So I can't go, and I can't keep moving forward. I have to move backwards, and that's what you're hearing me do. But we can try to add these to a sustain note. You can hear it all up on the top, but you can also tell that I'm not physically arrested again. Remember, I keep preaching that through a lot of these videos. If you're really giving her hell and you can't sustain these and your neck veins are popping out, look up some of my older videos when I was trying to get my voice back. You'll see my face get red and everything because I was pushing like a motherfucker. But we want to try to find a place where we can do these things without completely just bearing down and killing ourselves. The higher we go, the more we'll get into some of that, and it could be more taxing and more tiring. But for the most part, still, if we're staying up on the top, we should be all right. I'll show you a couple more if I can. This is right between my bridge. Now, some people will say that if you can't add vibrato to a note, then you don't own the note. You know, I like to be able to add vibrato to things if I can, but sometimes it's a fake vibrato. Sometimes the Chris Cornell vibrato you hear is fake as well. It's really just moving. Oh, yeah! You know, we're just like somebody's grabbing hold of you and going like this. I hope some of these concepts helped. Once again, talk about the preloading thing is very exciting to me because it's really helped me recently. Some of the things that have really helped me get my high range back is that every day, for a good 10, 15 minutes, maybe sometimes more, I will just stay in this very closed up, this tiny space and get these notes to work. And then I find that the high range keeps coming back because I'm telling those muscles, you got this, and I'm training those muscles instead of all this stuff down here. Make sense? Thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you.